Flipping and Wholesaling Houses in New York show. I am Michael Pinter, where I teach you how to start flipping or wholesaling houses, or if you're already doing it, how to grow your business. So about 4 months ago, I spoke about novations, what they were, and how I was going to introduce them into my repertoire. And I wanted to talk about an update because Eric asked me a follow-up video going in depth on how it works in New York. So I'm going to talk about it at length right now. So a couple things. First, an update. I had a deal that I thought was a perfect novation, and I screwed up because I didn't know the answer to a question and I didn't understand how you have to incorporate the seller's attorney into the process. And the deal died because the seller's attorney didn't. I didn't know what to say to the seller's attorney, and therefore that was probably my second novation deal that died. So I'm gonna explain what happened and the question they had and what you have to do in New York. First, let's do a first quick recap of what a novation is and what they mean. So, novations are something that are probably about 10 years old. I think they were started by Eric Brewer in Middle Pennsylvania and York, Pennsylvania. And he was designed at that time to avoid the whole flipping problem with FHA loans. So let me explain what they are, what the advantage and disadvantage is, and then we can go more in depth on it. So in general, right, most of the time when I go into a contract, I then, if the contract is assignable, I can assign the contract. So that means there's a seller A to me B, and I assign it to C. A to B, B to C. A novation means replacement. So instead of me assigning it A to B and B to C, instead of me assigning it B to C, C comes and replaces me, and it goes A to C directly. And then there's a separate agreement, novation agreement, which basically states that anything above the original contract price, those proceeds I'm going to get, and any expenses involved in getting the new contract fall on me. Also in New York, if the new buyer can't close, it falls on me to close. Right now, in other states, you may still have an out in the contract. Some places you get limited power of attorney so that you can actually sign the contract on behalf of the seller for the second contract. Those things will never work in New York, right? Certainly, nobody in New York no attorney in New York is gonna give you limited power of attorney, because they're your attorney. So you got to sort of get that out. Now, when I learned it, I was told right away that it's not necessary. So if I was told that was necessary, I never would have gone down the novation route. Now, the huge advantage to novation is that you now can novate the contract to any end user buyer who gets a regular mortgage. So let me take a step further back so you understand why this is even necessary. When you assign a contract, right? And I had 17 years in the mortgage business, I can tell you why do I always look red with this new camera? Standard, let me just change the lighting and see if I can look less red. I look more red now, right? Now I look like I'm Mr. Freeze. I don't know what to do. All right, who cares? So standard language from Fannie, Freddie, FHA is that the seller, which in the case of assignment is you, the assigner, has to be on title at the time of application for a loan. And as an assigner, you're never in title. So it's pretty much impossible to assign a contract to a regular end user buyer that's going to get standard bank financing. What we do is we assign it to a cash buyer who's going to come and either pay cash, not get regular financing, or get a hard money loan, which is also not regular financing. With innovation, you can then your target audience is then anyone who wants to move into the property. That's the huge advantage, and that is a tremendous advantage. I'll explain more a little later. The disadvantage is that the seller has to know that you are absolutely not going to close if you can find a new buyer, and the seller has to sort of agree to that and has to sign an novation agreement saying, well, I had a contract for 500 and now there's a new contract for 550. In New York, there's an additional disadvantage, which is that the seller's attorney really has to do work twice. They have to prepare a contract twice, which brings me to something that I've discovered in New York for novations, and that is you must preempt the problem by explaining to the seller's attorney, and I assure you, no attorney knows what a novation is, even though they can listen and say, yeah, that listen, they're going to be, this is what I tell sales attorney, you're going to do two contracts here. You're really going to have double the work. I understand that. If there's any additional legal fees, I will pay them at the closing. That usually quashes any problems. The first deal I had, here was the question that I couldn't answer, and I'll give you the answer. The sales attorney asked the question, we have a great contract with you. No contingencies. You're going to close. Now you're giving us another contract with a mortgage contingency that asks for everything to be good. Why the hell would my client sign the second contract? The answer to that, and I lost that deal because I didn't know the answer. The answer is because I'm on the hook for any problems. If the new buyer can't close, I'll close. If if there's any additional expenses, they fall on me. Any additional problems or repairs need to be done, they fall on me. That's the answer. Now, the second deal I lost was because the seller told me straight up, she said, I'm not doing a second contract. Now, what I should have said is, I'll pay you for it, and she probably would have closed. So I lost those two. Then I closed the first deal. First deal should have been good. I had a good buyer. Market was shifting in August, September. That's when everything was hitting the fan. And I ended up closing for I made like $1,000 on it. Okay. But I closed it and I was happy. Second deal worked much better. I made about 40 grand on it. All right. I had to do a few repairs. I had to build stairs and I had to do a termite treatment with a certificate, which is a standard thing, right? People do a termite inspection. They find termites everywhere. In every house, there's some termite evidence of termite damage. It could be 50 years old. And then you do a treatment and a warranty for a year. Standard. It cost me less than $1,000. Made about 40 grand. Great deal. I now have two in the pipeline, which could be good deals also, but I don't want to count my chickens before they hatch. So I want to see what happens. But what this allows me to do and why this is such an amazing tool, and even more importantly for New York, is it allows me to buy properties for more money than I ever would have paid. Let me explain. I have probably turned down 100, 200 deals through the years that were just too tight. So what happens very often is that you'll call a seller call you, and they'll say, I need 500 for the house. And you look at it and you're like, I could sell this thing in 5 seconds for 550. In New York, that's not a good enough spread, right? Because our closing costs on the buy are crazy, 10 grand on average. Our eventual closing costs on the sale, think about that. If I could sell it for 550, even if I just have to pay a buyer's agent 2% on that, that's already $11,000. I'm probably going to have $10,000 closing costs on the buy, $15,000 closing costs on the sell. If I borrow money and certainly taxes, it's going to take me 4 months to find a buyer. So what are we talking about? 50, 60 grand very often. So someone tells me they'll sell me a house for 500 that I have to close on and then sell for 550. That's not a deal. That was not a deal for me. But now what I'm saying to people is, listen, if you'll give me a novatable contract, which nobody understands what that is, and I have to explain, I can do it. I'll give you your number, but you have to let me market the property, show the property, and try to find someone who will let me make some money. The basic gist of it. There's a few other things, but that's the basic gist of it. And for a lot of people, they just want to know they got their number. They just want to know they have an ironclad contract for their number. They want me to take care of any of the hassles. A lot of times they're concerned that a buyer is going to come in and say, you got to make these repairs, and they don't have the money for it. And it all falls on me now. If the buyer says you got to make repairs, I'll do it. Right? And now my only real cost is that 2% to a buyer's agent. Right? I still have to pay that if the buyer has an agent. Sometimes they don't. Great. But you have to assume most of the time they will. Half the time they will. So 2%. So on a buy for 500, I have $11,000 in realty commissions, and I have $2,500 in legal fees. I can still turn that into a deal. So that's the amazing part of Novations, and that's what's going on now. So I have a deal in a more expensive part of town. It's a $1 million area, and I think I can get it for a good deal. But I'm terrified, right? I'm terrified if I have to close on this. It's going to cost me 80 grand to close, right? Because the interest costs and all that stuff. So I'm getting a novatable contract, and I believe I'm going to be able to sell it for a profit. I can put it out at 900 and maybe make some money, and then just basically do work to whoever needs. Assuming the buyer wants work done, I maybe can do that after the closing, right? And that's really what I'm telling the seller, that I want somebody who's going to buy it and let me do the work after the closing, which allows me to save all those closing costs. So, these two are in the mix. I hope they happen. One's got a title issue. One I think is going to close for sure. Well, one I think I'm going to get under contract for sure, and then I'm going to have to find a buyer right away. So that's what's going on with Novations. I think it's an amazing tool, almost more importantly in New York, because you can close deals for areas where the spreads made it impossible due to the closing costs. But now you can not close deals, you can get those deals and then find a buyer for it. But you have to be careful because, again, it falls on you. I'm going to have to close on it if I can't find a buyer at the price that we agree. So if this was helpful, if you're interested in all the ways I can help you, go to howtoflipnewyork.com or learntoflipandwholesale.com. If you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe. If you're watching on any media channel, please click the thumbs up. A lot more people seeing my videos, so thank you all. Please keep the comments coming. I post 5 times a week. I very often have no idea what to say. Your questions give me topics to discuss. You can ask any question. It does not have to be about the video you're watching at all. And if it's something simple, I'll just reply with an answer. If it's something that I've covered recently, I'll send you a link to a video. And if it's something that I haven't covered in a while or I've never covered or an update on something that you wanted, then I'll do a brand new video on it. So I really appreciate all the comments. I appreciate all the thumbs up. Thank you very, very much for watching.